Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
When she left me, there was one question I needed an answer to, but she never gave it to me. Instead, she simply said she had to leave. Yet, she also told me that she still loved me. I never got the closure I was hoping for, just her wordless departure and a lingering sense of confusion. That was 5 years ago. Now, she's found me again. By that time, I had completely overhauled my life. I sold my old house, liquidated my business, and moved to another city. I was determined to erase every trace of my former existence, working tirelessly to leave no clue behind. My assets were carefully shielded in a complex web of trusts. The first trust funneled its stipend into an offshore account, which was then passed through another trust, and again repeated once more before the funds finally reached me. It was a maze designed not to hide from the law, but to ensure no one could find me. The only ones who knew every detail were the IRS, though that wasn't the point. I wasn't trying to avoid taxes. I was trying to disappear. She found me anyway. My name is Logan Whitaker, 31 years old, and I'm a day trader by profession. I was fortunate to receive an inheritance from my grandfather upon earning my degree, which allowed me to dive into the world of investing. I kept a portion of the money, about $25,000, for my personal interest in small stock trading. In addition to that, I invested some of the inheritance in blue-chip stocks that provided solid dividends, offering a steady stream of income. But perhaps my most interesting investment was a small business that was struggling financially, a company that produced fasteners. They manufactured all kinds of nuts, bolts, screws, nails, and other hardware. Simple items, yet indispensable, used by people across various industries every single day. I first met Elena Marinos when she was 19, and I was 21. We spent a couple of years dating on and off, a connection that had its ups and downs but was never quite severed. After a while, I finally gathered the courage to ask her if she would marry me. To my surprise, she turned me down, but she wasn't cold about it. Elena told me she loved me, that if I wanted to be exclusive, we could continue in that direction. She even went on to say that, if she ever did marry, it would be to me. However, she made it clear that our physical connection was good and should continue as long as we both were willing. It was a strange declaration, but one that I accepted, not knowing what the future would hold. After roughly 2 years of being together, Elena told me she was planning to go on a family pilgrimage to Greece to connect with some of her extended family. She mentioned that the trip would last between 3 to 5 months. As usual, she expressed her love for me, and in the weeks leading up to her departure, she was determined to make the most of our time together, indulging in a whirlwind of passion, trying to exhaust me with every encounter. She left in late March, and her return was scheduled for no later than mid-August. While she was away, we kept in touch through letters and phone calls, and everything seemed fine at first. But by early July, something changed. All communication from her side stopped without warning. I waited, thinking maybe it was just a temporary lapse, but as the weeks passed, I realized that she wasn't coming back. She never returned to me, and it wasn't until recently that I heard from her again. I was angry, hurt, and confused. About 7 months after the last communication from her, I decided to leave town. I sold my company at a decent profit and moved all of my blue chips into a blind trust. I went to Denver and started over. I swore off women for almost a year and a half. I didn't date. I kept all communications with women to a minimum. I even refused to tell my family my new location. They would tell Elena where I was if she contacted them. I bought a new company, and because of my anger, I hired only men. I was surprised at how many men were looking for office work as a secretary or receptionist. I had a male administrative assistant, and all of my sales staff was male. About 2 years after I moved to Denver, I met a nice woman who seemed to be a little mysterious, and I was intrigued. I dated Alyssa for about 4 months before I realized that there was no real passion there. We parted as semi-friends. I have never been able to be a total friend to someone I dated. I got back in the dating game, and as my business took off, I also hired some women to work for me. It was strictly business. I firmly believed in the Buddhist adage, don't shit in your rice bowl or something like that. I did not dive in the secretarial pool. In spite of my dating, I had not found a woman that set me astir. I was not a monk, but I made sure my partners knew that it was only a friends with benefits type relationship. The ladies that could not accept that never got a second date. Well, I was walking in City Park on Saturday morning in June, a little more than 5 years after Elena left, when I heard someone call Logan. No one in Denver knew that nickname. I turned toward the sound, and there she was. Elena had come back. I walked over to her, and she reached out like she was going to hug me. I stepped back out of reach. Elena looked confused and hurt. What's wrong? Aren't you glad to see me? Elena, if you were the last woman in this city, I would move away. I was promised by a certain woman that she would come back to me in 4 or 5 months. 3.5 months later, she stopped communicating with me. I was until 5 minutes ago almost over the hurt. Is it still Miss Marino's? Or is it Mrs. Something? I waited for 6 months beyond the time you promised to be back before I gave up and sold my company and moved. My God, I really damaged you, didn't I? I know and knew that you loved me, but I didn't think that you would still be waiting for me after I didn't come back. And it is still Marino's. I have never married. I told you when you asked me that if I married it would be to you. Then why in the hell didn't you contact me with a reason to stop talking? Then why in the hell did you not come back when you promised? Then why in the hell are you here and not out of my miserable life? She started to sob. I didn't just hurt you, did I? I destroyed you. I'm so sorry. Listen up, bitch. You did destroy me. I have had dated exactly 5 women in 5 years, and most were all in the last 6 months. Please, for God's sake, get out of my life. You have damaged me very deeply. Then she started crying. I turned around and walked away. Well, that little tirade didn't work. Elena was at the office door before we opened. I was always the first one in, so when I refused to go near her, my staff was standing outside waiting for me to open the doors. I went in the back and walked to the front door. I pushed the panic bar from inside. After everyone was inside, I blocked the entrance and let the door close without unlocking it. That didn't work. She called my secretary and made an appointment. When my guy told me of the appointment, I informed him that if he did not cancel it, he would be looking for another job. He canceled. That didn't work either. Elena showed up at my house. In the morning, Elena was parked in the street across from the gate to the community. Security wouldn't let just anybody in, and visitors had to be cleared and announced. Elena wanted neither action to occur. I ignored her. I drove to the diner where I eat every morning and asked for my usual breakfast to go. Elena came just as I was paying. If I see your face within 1,000 feet of me, I will swear out a stalking complaint against you. Do I make myself clear? She just nodded and left. That didn't work either. She somehow got a job with one of my best customers, and he insisted that I come to a welcome to the company family dinner. I walked in and Elena was smirking. I called my customer over and told him he needed to find another source for his supplies because I would not deal with his new employee. I left before dinner. The next day, I called a meeting of my senior staff. When they were all assembled, I started. I am going to sell the business. I have a major personal issue that I can't solve here. I will entertain a buyout from one or any combination of all of you. I will take 45% of last year's after-tax profit. I will also entertain ideas on how I can keep the business but not be here for the day-to-day stuff. Either way, I am leaving Denver in no more than 6 weeks. Well, that silenced the peanut gallery. For about 5 minutes, there was a lot of whispered conversation. Finally, my head accountant spoke up. Martin said, "Why don't you take the company public and make it a corporation? That way you could retain the majority of voting stock and be chairman and appoint a COO. You know, I hadn't thought of that. I will talk to my broker today. Thanks. I want all of you to know that regardless of how this comes out, you will all keep your jobs. I will make that part of any sales agreement, and if I find I can take the company public, you will all have stock issued to you." I called my broker, and he was very enthusiastic about his firm underwriting an IPO for my company. It seems my little company was getting a regional reputation. He did say that I would need to have a comprehensive audit done, as well as an evaluation of the company. He gave me the names of several firms that did that kind of business. A couple of them were in the city. I wanted more than one appraisal in case there was a big discrepancy between them. After I made arrangements with the 2 local companies, and one from Lansing, Michigan, I told my executive assistant that I would not be in to work the rest of the week, and he was to only call me if the building was on fire or collapsed. He laughed and said he could handle it. I spent that week talking to real estate agents looking for a temporary lease until the mess with Elena settled out. I also listed my house with an agent. Within 4 days, I had a bidding war between 2 buyers. I asked the agent to let me interview the buyers. I was told that was against the ethics of the local real estate board and probably against the law. So, I asked the agent to describe the buyers. Buyer 1 was a young couple that had come into a small inheritance and wanted to buy a house and get out of apartment living. They had the lowest offer, full asking price, and they would pay for all closing costs and inspections. Buyer 2 was a young single Greek woman. As soon as she said Greek, I guessed it was Elena, who was offering a 7% premium over asking, closing, inspections, and realtor's commission. Her offer was totaled out at 15% over asking. I countered the couple with the house and contents except my personal things, cooking utensils, china, and silverware. I also agreed to pay the inspections and split closing costs. Of course they accepted. The agent was not happy. I pointed out that she had the couple's offer for a couple of days before the other one came in, and if she tried to stop my acceptance, I would sue her for her real estate license. The law stated that you could not refuse an offer of full price unless the buyer was not solvent enough to fulfill the terms. After the offer was accepted, I was called by Elena and she started screaming. I had had enough. I contacted my lawyer and asked him to petition the court for a restraining order on Elena. He said he would get right on it. The next week, the three companies were coming in on separate days to do some of their due diligence. One was coming Monday, another Tuesday, and the one from Lansing on Thursday. I was busy the rest of the time. I was mending the fence with the customer I dumped. I even offered an extra 2% below catalog for 6 months. He asked what set me off. I told him of Elena's ambush. He laughed and said that as soon as I walked out, she quit. The rest of the week was meeting with the brokers and the underwriting people. It turned out my little company had goodwill worth a lot. We were also competitive with foreign suppliers, so with our quick shipping time and Made in America labels, we were fast becoming a smaller but significant national player. While all this was going on, Elena was not silent nor was she passive. I received an offer for 45% of my company from a Greek consortium. My lawyer told me the price was what I had valued the whole company at, but the offer had a gotcha clause. The buyer insisted that I remain in charge and that a person of their choice was to be given a position equal to my 2 executive vice presidents. I smelled a rat, and not a 4-legged one. I told the lawyer my plans for going public and that I was refusing all offers until I see what the market looked like. She also continued to call my cell phone. I solved the problem by going to my provider and getting a new number. Then when the cell phone didn't work, she must have hired an investigator to keep her posted on my whereabouts when I wasn't at work. She showed up at any restaurant I went to and made sure I saw her. She even managed to find out my new address. Once she was served with the restraining order, all that stopped. The investigator was fired. The calls stopped, and she stopped sitting in the lobby of the apartment building I was staying in. One thing I forgot was to have the order include written correspondence. She sent me a letter. Logan, I am writing to say again how sorry I am. I was wrong to not tell that the trip was to get me married to a son of a family business partner. I did not know it when I went, and once we were in Greece, my father took my passport. The guy I was supposed to get married to was not a nice person. He was spoiled, arrogant, and turned out to be gay. I did not marry him. I was not allowed to call you after that last call I made, and all of the servants were warned that if I mailed a letter with their help, they would be fired. I also have an aunt who was my chaperone and keeper. I was not allowed to go anywhere by myself. I finally retrieved my passport about 6 months before I saw you in the park. I escaped and went to the American embassy and asked to have them arrange for me to get home. When I got back to the U.S., you had left, and no one knew where you went. You even managed to hide your financial footprint from my investigators. I finally discovered your phone number, and the investigators ran down the company address. That was not enough, as you were not listed anywhere in the company records. It took a while to realize that your trust owned the company, and those records only led to another trust. I went back to the investigators, and finally they followed you and got your home address. I took the first flight to here to find you. I guess you did all right for yourself because your gated community security people were very loyal. I watched you for a couple of weeks and saw that you often walked in the park, so I ambushed you there. I am so sorry for what happened to you. I loved you and I still do. I want to be with you. Please at least let me talk to you for a half hour. Elena. I didn't know if she was lying or embellishing, but I did remember that her father had always acted like he hated me, so he may have hatched that plot. I decided to do something that I had heard about and might give me some answers. I hired a back-dated clipping research firm to find any mention of Elena in the European newspapers. I also had some federal contacts, and I got the number of the American embassy in Athens. I called and they told me that they had no record of Elena asking for emergency transport to the U.S. The clipping service came up with pages and pages of pictures and clippings of Elena partying in Monaco, Nice, Paris, Rome, and London over a 4.5-year period. She was always in the company of a son of a prominent Greek politician. His name was Lucian Vaughn. One of the photos from about the 3rd year she was gone showed Elena looking about 8 months pregnant. So much for a chaperone and keeper. I decided to get a little extra payback. I had copies made of all of the pictures and included them with a response letter. Elena, your keeper is very handsome. I didn't know you were related to the Vaughn family. Lucian is a funny name for an aunt. I hope your baby has a father. By now you must realize the damage you have done. Not only did to break off communication, but when you came back you stalked, cheated, and lied to me. I am having the restraining order amended to include written or internet communication. I loved you, and you destroyed that love. I want nothing to do with you. There will be no meeting. I do have one question. If you decided to find a new plaything in Europe, why didn't you come out and tell me when you did? As you can see from the dates on the newspapers, you were only gone 3 weeks when you first went out in public with Lucian. Again, I loved you, but you trashed that love and destroyed my trust in women for a long time. Logan. I sent the letter with having a signature required. I sent it to the address Elena had put on her letter. The events didn't unfold as I had imagined. The day I received the signature card from the letter, the paper ran a story about a fatal car crash. The driver, fleeing from the police after they attempted to stop her for speeding, collided with a bridge abutment at a very high speed. It was Elena. According to the paper, she intentionally drove into the abutment. I went into a funk because I really did love Elena, and all of the lies and the desertion had profoundly hurt me. I was in a daze for a couple of weeks when business reared its head, and I had to slap myself to become clear-headed. Then the IPO sort of bogged down. The broker and the underwriting company thought that timing was important. It was 2 months after I had talked to the broker and another 10 weeks after I told the employees 6 weeks. About 4 months after all of that died down. And after the successful IPO, I got an offer for my shares of the company at a premium of 25% over their end-of-day trading price, which was at least as much as what I was willing to sell the company to the employees. It was a big premium over what I had paid to buy the company. The offer came from Elena's family. I thought it over, and as Elena was gone, and I liked Denver very much, I decided to stay, but I also was not enthused about going back to the factory. Then when I decided to sell to Elena's family, there seemed to be some conditions added. The first condition was that I had to retain 10% of the stock. The second condition was that I was to remain as chairman of the board and vote the Marino's family shares. The third condition was that I needed to talk to the family. I decided that they deserved to see me if for no other reason than to have some closure. I signed the offer sheet papers and bought a house about 4 doors away from where I had lived. I met the family at the official signing of the sales agreement. Elena's mother Helena was still in semi-shock over her death, but hugged me and told me that I had been good for Elena and that the trip to Greece was a huge mistake. Elena's father, Antonios, shook my hand, and they both asked for a half an hour after the business meeting. I agreed. The meeting was an eye-opener. Mother and father were there, but so was grandson Logan Antonios Marinos, Elena's son. With him and taking care of him was a nanny named Callista Vaughn. She was Lucian, cousin, and as we talked, I found out she was on the outs with her Greek relatives. One thing that surprised me was the hostility I had felt from Antonios, Elena's father, was gone. And he explained that he realized that Elena had lied to me about Lucian. He felt that she was not an honorable person and had disgraced the family name. The gist of the discussion was that the trip was pushed by Lucian and that Elena was in favor of going. She was dating Lucian when she told me it was a family trip. She thought she could go to Europe and just put me out of her life, but Lucian turned out to be a serial cheater, and when the baby was born, he disappeared. Because of the scandal of Lucian taking a powder, his family paid a huge amount of what Antonios called hush money and sent Callista to Elena and more money to their family. They used that money to buy my shares. Mother and dad were going back to Greece, but the baby was an American citizen, and Callista was a permanent resident alien, working toward her citizenship. They asked that I be her sponsor as she would be in great danger in Greece, and there was no one in America they trusted more to be fair. The kicker was they named me conservator of the company shares. They had put them in Logan's name. I looked at the child and I was lost. He had done nothing wrong, and I felt I would be a good guardian. I agreed to everything. Callista had an apartment just about a quarter-mile from the community I lived in. She was a frequent visitor to my house. About 6 months after meeting her, we were dating. She was about 8 years younger than me, but told me that difference was not unusual for Greek couples. Logan and Callista, I called her Callie, became a big part of my healing, and a year after we started dating, I asked Callie to marry me. She said yes. We married and raised Logan as our own. We even went so far as to adopt him. As he grew, we added 2 wonderful sisters for him. When he was 5, Callista Athena was born, and 2 years later Galeen Athena arrived. I would like to say my brilliant business tactics made us tons of money, but I was very conservative with Logan's shares and their worth. The company grew, but only in a natural progression, and when he takes over the shares when he turns 25, he will be a wealthy young man, but not one of the super rich like his late father. Yes, it seems a certain Lucian Vaughn's body was found about a year after the family meeting. It appeared to the Greek police that it was a revenge murder, but they never discovered the perpetrators. I received a copy of the newspaper report from an anonymous source about 6 weeks after the discovery. Life is an adventure, and the road is almost never straight. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.